The blizzard was ruthless that night, the kind that silences everything except the sound of the wind howling through the trees. In a small wooden cabin on the edge of a snow-covered road, an old widow named Martha Jennings stood near her fireplace, her frail hands trembling slightly as she stirred a pot of soup. The power had gone out hours ago, but she didn't mind. She was used to the quiet. Since her husband Henry passed 3 winters ago, the silence had become her constant companion. But that night, silence was shattered by the distant growl of engines echoing through the storm. 20 motorcycles struggling against the snow, their headlights slicing through the dark like lost souls searching for warmth. If you believe that one act of kindness can change the world, that second chances still exist, and that humanity is worth saving, then take a moment right now, like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us what it means to be human. Martha peered through her frosted window, her heart pounding. She saw them, silhouettes of men, large and intimidating, their leather jackets gleaming under the faint light, tattoos crawling up their necks, breath visible in the cold air. Bikers, the kind most people would lock their doors against. But something about the way they stood, huddled together, made her hesitate. They weren't dangerous. They were freezing. One of them staggered and nearly collapsed. Another rushed to steady him. Without a second thought, Martha opened her door. The warm glow of her little cabin spilled onto the snow. "Come inside before you freeze to death," she whispered, clutching her shawl tightly around her shoulders. They looked at her, uncertain, their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, meeting her gaze. Then, silently, they followed her inside. One by one, 20 burly bikers filled her tiny home. The smell of leather, gasoline, and cold air mixed with the comforting aroma of soup and burning wood. Martha moved quickly, grabbing blankets, towels, and whatever she could find. The men removed their gloves and boots, grateful but awkward. It had been a long time since anyone had shown them kindness without asking for something in return. They had been on a charity ride, traveling across states to deliver supplies to a veteran's shelter when the storm hit. Their trucks got separated from the convoy, and they lost their way. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and fuel was running low. They would not have survived the night if they hadn't found that cabin. Martha, frail but unshakable, became their unexpected savior. The leader, who introduced himself as Jack, tried to thank her. She waved him off gently, saying, "You boys are somebody's sons. My Henry would have wanted me to help." Her eyes glistened, and for the first time in years, she smiled through her loneliness. She poured soup into mismatched bowls, handed them out, and made sure every man had a blanket. They ate in silence at first, their hardened faces softening under the warmth of her hospitality. As the night deepened, stories began to flow. One man told her about losing his family. Another confessed he'd just come out of prison and was trying to rebuild his life. Martha listened to each of them, nodding, sometimes placing a gentle hand on their shoulders. They hadn't expected comfort, least of all from an old widow living alone in the middle of nowhere. The storm raged outside, but inside, something miraculous happened. The warmth of compassion melted years of pain, regret, and guilt. Martha shared stories of her late husband, a war veteran who used to fix motorcycles for the local kids. She told them how he'd taught her never to judge a soul by its appearance. "You can't see a man's heart by the jacket he wears," she said softly. The men listened like children hearing their grandmother's wisdom for the first time. When midnight came, they helped her. Bring in firewood, fixed her broken porch light, and even repaired the crack in her front door. One of them, a mechanic, tuned up her old generator so the lights flickered back to life. Before long, laughter filled the cabin. The image was surreal. 20 rough bikers sitting cross-legged around a fireplace, roasting marshmallows, singing old songs Martha hadn't heard since her youth. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Morning broke calm and clear. The storm had passed and the road was buried under glistening snow. Martha woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of clinking dishes. The bikers had cleaned her entire kitchen, repaired her fence, and even shoveled the snow from her walkway. Jack handed her a small envelope before leaving. It contained a note and a $100 bill. "For the soup and the kindness," he said. She smiled and told him to keep it, but he insisted. They thanked her again, one by one, each calling her Ma'am or Mama J, and promised they'd visit again. Martha stood in the doorway, waving as the rumble of 20 engines faded into the morning mist. She thought that was the end of it. But she was wrong. It was only the beginning. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she heard it again, the distant roar of motorcycles. At first, she thought she was dreaming. Then it grew louder and louder. She opened her door and gasped. Her small cabin was bathed in the glow of hundreds of headlights. The ground trembled under the weight of their engines. One by one, bikes came to a stop outside her house. Row after row, stretching down the snowy road as far as she could see. Nearly 1,000 bikers stood there, wearing the same emblem on their jackets, the Hells Angels. Martha's hands trembled as she clutched her shawl. Jack stepped forward again, this time surrounded by a sea of riders. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady. Word got around. "The brothers wanted to meet the angel who saved 20 of our own." Martha blinked. Overwhelmed. She had no words, only tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. The crowd of bikers stood silently in respect. Then, slowly, one by one, they began placing boxes, envelopes, and bags on her porch. Food supplies, cash donations, blankets, medicine, even a brand new wood-burning stove. Someone parked a truck beside her house with a banner that read, "Angels Never Forget." Martha couldn't believe it. She looked out over the crowd of rough, tattooed men, some wiping their eyes, others bowing their heads. "Why?" she asked softly, her voice breaking. Jack smiled. "Because kindness like yours deserves an army to protect it." They stayed the whole day, helping her repair the roof, install proper heating, and stock her home for the winter. A few of them even built her a new fence and fixed her barn. The local news arrived, cameras flashing, but Martha didn't care for the attention. She only cared about the faces around her. Men who had once been judged by the world, now standing tall because someone believed they were worth saving. By evening, the Hells Angels were ready to leave. Before they did, Jack handed her a leather jacket with their insignia on the back and her name stitched across the front. Mama Angel. He told her it was an honorary title, given to those who showed extraordinary compassion. Martha held it close, tears falling freely. "I'm just an old woman," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "No, ma'am, you're what this world needs more of." When the engines started again, the sound was deafening, 1,000 throats roaring in unison. But beneath that thunder was something beautiful. A promise that even in a world gone cold, warmth still existed. As they disappeared into the distance, Martha stood in her doorway once more, the same place where it all began, and whispered a prayer of gratitude for her husband Henry. Somehow she felt he was smiling down, proud that she had kept his spirit alive. Days later, donations began pouring in from across the country. Biker clubs, veterans groups, and even strangers sent letters, money, and gifts. Martha's story spread online, touching millions. She received handwritten notes from people who said her kindness had restored their faith in humanity. Some said they had decided to reconcile with estranged family members. Others said they had forgiven old grudges. All because one elderly widow chose compassion over fear. And Martha? She never asked for anything in return. She used the money to open a small roadside shelter for travelers caught in the cold, a place where anyone, no matter who they were, could find warmth, food, and kindness. Above the door, she hung a wooden sign her biker friends had carved for her. It read simply, "Welcome, friend." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness still has power in this world, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more real, soul-stirring stories. Before you go, comment below with just one word, kindness. Let's fill the comments with light, because even the smallest act of compassion can ignite a fire that never goes out. And somewhere out there, on a snow-covered highway, 1,000 engines still roar through the night, not as outlaws but as angels, riding for the woman who opened her door and changed their lives forever.